How do you do? How do you do? How do you do? Give me a light. Give me a light to make me light my split. Give me a light to make me light my split. Give me a light to make me light my split. And say, Loba doba loba doba doba. Loba doba loba get to the club.
Well, tonight we're with the great Lee Perry, and he's got a really good band with him, and he's got me mixing it. So we're going to have, I think we're going to have a really good show, and it's like bits of dub and straight reggae, but like spiced up. Well, funnily enough, I worked with him for the first time in the mid-80s, but I actually first met him when I was 13, in 1971.
Where was that?
That was in a record shop in Harlesden, Palmer Records, Soundville record shop on Craven Park Road in North London. He was there over there with his wife and family at the time. I didn't know him, but he walked in, and people said, "Oh, it's the great upsetter." And I looked round, and there was Lee, and he's not that big, but I knew obviously who he was. But I was only 13, and I think Return of Django and that kind of things. You know, we had like the his kind of skinhead records were more popular. But I was with my friend Joe, who ran a club and worked for Palmer, and he was with me. He'd taken me to London. I'd come from my mother's, and just happened to be in the record shops. The first time I set eyes on him was a long time ago. He was a legend then. He was already a legend in that period.
Hello, hello.
In the 70s, in the beginning of the 80s, you were working with a lot of post-punk groups. What do you remember of that period?
That period was great in the respect that you had lots of people sharing the same stage who shouldn't have even been in the same room together, or you wouldn't have expected them to be. And I think what happened was lots of people were very, very angry, young people with lack of opportunities and social situations in England, which created the kind of punk movement or new wave movement, whatever you want to call it. But lots of people suddenly started playing instruments they couldn't even play, and it was like almost like the rap stuff now. The new MCs spitting in England, they're really angry and just letting off their vibes. You had that same thing then, the equivalent then, but they were playing guitars in those days. And I think a lot of them were influenced by the lyrics of the reggae, because the lyrics in the reggae were like revolutionary lyrics, like Dr. Alimantado's Born for a Purpose, which was like championed by John Lydon. There was, brilliant history of lyrics. Bob Marley's lyrics were revolutionary, Get Up, Stand Up. And in England we had bands like Steel Pulse, really all quite political times. We've gone through a period in recent years where it was very non-political England. And so it's very good at the moment to see all the young students rioting and getting a bit of attitude again. But it takes another Conservative Party to really piss people off again. But in those periods, in answer to your question, which I've gone a roundabout on, you'd have situations where you'd have a lot of these bands with the Rock Against Racism movement all sharing the same stage and being, it was a very healthy movement going on.
Is crossover music a typical British invention?
Crossover, I think, means a different thing to me. To you.
It's a combination of funk, reggae, new wave, punk.
A crossover is when something's not commercial and then it becomes popular. I think you mean where they mix the two styles kind of thing. That's what you mean. I think you've got, if your society reflects what goes on, if you've got like sound system dances and stuff, and lots of people from a non-reggae background go to that, they fall in love with it. So I think you had bands, discovered the ska, for example, of the mid '60s or later '60s, and then in the late '90s, mid-late '70s, they made their own ska bands in England, but added their own flavour, and with the Selector, and then they incorporated aspects of politics in with the ska. So basically they hooked on another type of music, their own flavour. And that's what happened. But lots of people in England, were also listening to American music. So like Mark Stewart, for example, and the pop group, they were playing funk, but he was sort of singing, very, very political lyrics over the top of funk rhythms. It's all kind of explainable, and that's the kind of thing. But I think that's the one good thing about England is the people there, their sense of humour and their anger. And the fact is, being an island, its history is very brutal and very violent. A lot of the seaside towns from the south to the north, from Hull to Ramsgate, where I live, from Brighton, whatever, they've got very violent pasts going back to days Liverpool, to the slavery times, and the history with all the people, the former colonies, and the mixture of people mixing at school, people from Pakistan mixing with kids from Somalia, whose heritage is from there. They're born in England, but they've got the flavours that have produced things like Asian Dub Foundation, and I cited the pop group, but then even bands like Public Image that went, Lydon went from the punk thing. Then you could hear with Wobble and him and Keith the influences they had, where it slowed the beat down and almost went to a kind of new, very original and very healthy area where they were using dub as an underbelly, but probably not even realising they were doing that.
Next year, then is the 30 years of anniversary of your record label. What can we expect about that?
I'm going to put out 12 albums, reissues, 3 albums every 3 months in a batch of 3. I'm going to release 4 new titles next year as well.
Which titles?
The new titles is going to be, the first one is going to be March, is going to be African Head Charge, a new album which I'm just finished it this week, which is called Voodoo of the God Sent. Then there's going to be a new On You Sound produced Little Axe album, which is really, really good. It's basically it's like The Misadventures of Blind Willie Drug Pig. It's a very nice album. I have another album coming. It's all women from all around the world. So it's all female vocalists singing in non-English. It's called Dub No Frontiers. And I've got people singing in Chinese, Arabic, German, with Ari Up singing in German for me. There's Eritrean, Romani, Russian, Spanish, Italian, French. It's many, many, many different languages. I'm still completing that, but that's a very beautiful thing. I've been making that for a few years. It's like I said, it's all female vocalists. Very proud of. I've got a Lee Perry record, which is basically a contemporary one. We've been making with like Digital Mystics, Code 9, Horsepower, Congo Natty, which is a kind of contemporary Lee Perry on you, but with a complete modern thing. And then carrying on from next year, I'm going to get the momentum to basically keep the label's profile up and get someone to run it properly, because I'm not very good at running the label. Lee Perry's got the spirit of a child. Lee Perry it's an honour to work with Lee. But I'm a big fan to start. I'm a fan who got his hands on a mixing desk, and I count my blessings. Working with him, it doesn't get any better. I've said it before, but I think he is one of the most important figures of 20th century music. Massively influential, great fun to work with in the studio. He's very good company. He's very bright. And he's come here to chase Lucifer out of the world.
And what are your future plans with Lee Perry? More concert next year?
It's not really my plans for Lee Perry. It's Lee Perry's plans if they fit in with me. I mean, we were invited. We get invited. Like I was invited to come here by the promoter tonight. Yeah. I might have a couple of things I'll ask Lee to do. I'll speak to him. Otherwise, I got a phone call this week from Jamaica. They wanted Lee and me to go to do an event in February for Red Bull in Jamaica together, which would be great. But unfortunately, I think he's going to America. So every time I work with him, it's a great evening, and I love it. So I hope he continue. I hope he becomes the oldest performing artist of all time. I hope he goes on till he's 100 and older. And
He's a healthy person.
Lee's amazing. You look at his posture. If you see him, he hardly ever sits down. So he stands up nearly all day long. So his back's perfect. And if he's on stage, he can stay on stage dancing and moving for hours if he wants to. He never complains. He's vegetarian, doesn't drink, doesn't smoke, doesn't eat meat. So he's become very, very spiritual as he's got older. And I'm very blessed that I've got him as a friend and someone I've been blessed to work with. So.